The streets will never make you grow. It's not a seed, it's a gutter. There's no happy endings in this life. So this is my message to you. The streets will never love you back.
Hey guys, well, again together, Tuesday night. Today we're going to talk about the mob cops. It's good to see you guys here. I'm glad you guys could join me today. Today we got special guest, first grade detective Tommy Dades. Now, Tommy Dades he was a co-writer of the book Friends of the Family. We're going to get him on here. He's going to walk us through the mob cops, when they started. He knows a lot about them, and let's see what he has to say. So I'm going to put him on, and enjoy the show. Everyone be respectful. I'm going to give a couple shout outs. Boston J, I see you. Live and Let Live. Rojo Tommaso, Richie, Dan, Brooklyn Chris, Patrick Denigan. To all you guys, thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. Now, also tonight at 8 p.m., Fatball Sicilian is going to be interviewing AJ Soprano, the actor. Soprano's son, AJ. So, at 8 p.m., you could check him out. We're going to probably be on here for an hour. I'm going to make this into a couple segments with Tommy Dades and the mob cops, Friends of the Family, okay? So I'm going to put Tommy Dades on. Tommy.
What's up, Jimmy?
How's everything?
I'm hanging in there.
Good. You look good. You look like you're 40 years old.
Yeah, I wish.
How's everything?
Good. Hanging in there, pal.
Long time no see.
Yes, sir.
Well, listen, hey, we're gonna go to the fights again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
My friend, he has the tickets for us out in Philly and Art of War. So we're gonna go with the girls again. But I really appreciate you coming on here today to talk about the mob cops. And you're the co-author of Friends of the Family. And there was a couple books written on these mob cops. I don't know much about them. I know a few things that they did. I know I don't know what made them get mixed up with the mob, but I know there's a backstory to this.
Yeah, there's a backstory, and there's some questions that were still never answered to any of us. But I'll tell you as much as I know. We never did an interview on, from beginning to end before. So, I guess we'll do a couple of parts on this. It's never been done before.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll make this into a 4-part series or a 5-part series. Like we'll start tonight. We'll get an hour in. We'll start from the beginning. To my knowledge, I think these mob cops, they started with their career, I think 1969, right?
Correct. That's when they went to police academy.
Yeah, so from 1969 to 1979, I don't know what happened,
Well, we never figured out, where. We know that in 1979, they worked in the Brooklyn Robbery Squad, and that's where they became partners. And we don't know if they 100% knew each other before that. And we still don't know how they connected to trust each other to start committing all these crazy crimes together. It's that we were never able to find out.
Yeah, so there's so many players involved. And, as we go along with this story, we're going to come up with a lot of names, from the neighborhood, from guys outside the neighborhood. A lot of guys get killed that were dealing with these cops. And then it exchanged from one hand to another hand,
This brings in every, so many people from back in the day, just so many names cross over, big names in organized crime. Some real Mad Hatters. It really escalates relative to it's crazy how the Castellano murder is really what makes Queso use them, even though they were used by Burt Kaplan once before Queso would trust them enough to use them. We know that they definitely did bad things before Burt Kaplan, but we don't know exactly what. That was between 79 and 83.
Yes. Yes. So what year do we start with these mafia cops?
Well, in 79, they're partners in the robbery squad, and then they go off to other places. Caracap, I believe, went to the 8-4 squad, and Ippolito went to the 6-2 squad. And then eventually, Caracappa goes to the Major K squad, where he is the pinnacle guy, where he databases everything to do with organized crime and is in touch with every agency in the city relative to organized crime. And in 1983, I believe it's 83, I believe I'm correct, Burt Kaplan is in jail, and Louis' cousin, Frank Santoro, is in prison with him, and they become friends. Now, Burt Kaplan originally was on record with Christy Tick, and at a 19th hole. And when Christy Tick goes to jail, he gives him to Queso. And Burt Kaplan was a sharp, brain-wise, a very sharp guy, big money maker. He was involved in the garment district and a lot of illegal activities. He probably, according to people that I know that dealt for him, had the best pot in New York. Nobody had better pot than him. And he was dealing in tons. The amount of money they were making was sick. And in 1983, him and Frank Santoro have a conversation where Santoro tells him, listen, my cousin's a detective, and anything you need done, and anything to me means anything. That's what makes me believe there was bad things going on, really bad things going on prior. He says, you just let me know and he'll do it.
Now, the guy Santoro you're talking about is the guy who got killed on Beth Avenue.
Yes, with Carmine Veriali.
Now, Carmine Veriali was cousins to Pat and Albie, and they were both murdered too. So, I mean, this story is so complex.
It shoots all over the place, and it's hard to keep track of it. If you're not really in the know, like of the neighborhood and the players, you'll get lost. And sometimes I don't even know everything because there's a lot of people involved in investigating this case. I didn't do this alone.
So as far as Frank Santoro, do we have to tell the people where he got murdered, or are we going to run into that?
We'll run into that.
We're going to run into that? Okay, so where do you want to start?
We could just start, basically, that conversation happens in prison, and they both get out of jail. And Kaplan had volunteered the services of those two detectives without introducing them to him. He was smart. He kept them close to the vest to Queso. And Queso's like, why would I need to use these two guys when they're turning on their own? They'll turn on me just as fast. I got my own people to do things. I don't need them. So before he gets involved with them, Queso, there's a guy that is involved in an Hasidic an Orthodox Jewish man who was involved in like trader bonds, and there was something fugazi going on. I'm not an expert in that story of exactly what takes place, but there's people that are afraid that he's going to cooperate. And Kaplan elicits Caracappa and Ippolito to grab this guy, and through Santoro, because Santoro's still alive.
Now, the thing is, this Santoro, right? So he met Santoro in prison.
Correct.
Okay, this Santoro, what position did he held as far as in a crime family?
He was an associate of the Lucchese crime family.
Did he get straightened out eventually?
No.
He was never straightened out. Okay, so Burt Kaplan meets Santoro in prison, and then something happens with Burt Kaplan. They think he's going to cooperate.
They think that this guy Greenwald is going to cooperate in some
Okay.
kind of trader bond scam. And Santoro was told by Kaplan that they want to get this guy and they want to kill him. They want to get rid of him. And there's a bigger story to it. Joe Ponzi is very familiar with the story, but this is the first murder. And what happens is they kidnap, they pull him over, they sit on him, they pull him over on the highway, and they pretend that they're locking him up. They bring him back to a body shop that this guy Franzone owns on Nostrand Avenue in Brooklyn. And Caracappan and Polito basically played Chicky while Santoro and Franzone are in the garage with him, and Santoro shoots him to death. And when the murder is complete, Ippolito and Caracappa leave, and they don't know, but Santoro and this guy Franzone, they break up the concrete and they bury the body in this body shop. And they re-cement it, and that body's there for a long time. His family reports him missing. Nobody hears from him again. So what really triggers Queso is when Jimmy Heidel meets with Mickey Boy Paradiso. And Mickey Boy, we find out later, we didn't know at the time, but we find out the pattern of what really happens. Now we drift off to another way. At one time, Queso supposedly labeled Angelo Ruggiero a rat, that he had a wire on him.
Yeah.
And Paul Castellano at the time was the boss, and Queso goes to Gotti and tells Gotti and Sammy that Angelo, there's rumors that he's working for the government, whoever he's working for. And they didn't believe it, but they do an internal investigation. They determined that it's not true, which it wasn't. And that's that. And then after Paul Castellano gets killed, Ruggiero is a captain and John is the boss. And he never forgot Ruggiero. So he goes to John and he says, listen, he labeled me a rat. I want to kill Queso. I couldn't do it while Paul was alive. So Gotti said, kill him. So Ruggiero goes to Mickey Boy Paradiso and gives him the contract. He then elicits Jimmy Heidel to get a crew together and kill Queso. They get together, he gets together with 3 other people. So there's 4 altogether. And they get him down in Canarsie in front of a restaurant. And they start shooting at him. He gets, a flesh wound, nothing serious, and runs and goes through the restaurant and hides. They take off. And Queso's infuriated on what happened. And he has no clue who these guys are. What happened was, when Jimmy goes home.
Jimmy Heidel
goes home. Jimmy's sister was dating not the Saponaro that went away to jail, who we locked up with Joe Beef. The cousin Saponaro, related to John and Joe Sapp, who were both made guys in the Wimpy Boy, in the Wimpy Boy Club. And he's in the house. He's dating one of Jimmy's sisters. And he comes in and he just starts telling her the whole story, who was involved, the whole bit, and he overhears it. He then goes to his father, who's a made guy with Greg, and he tells Greg. And Greg then calls Queso and says, I know one of the guys who was definitely involved in your attempted, murder. So Queso tries to find them and they're having no luck. So he then gets desperate and calls. Now, Santoro at the time, it's 19 86.
Well, probably got killed already, no?
I believe Santoro's dead already. I believe he's dead already.
Because
he gets killed with Carmine Veriali on Bath Avenue.
that was the early '80s.
Yeah, that was Frankie Smith who kills the both of them. And
Now the thing is too, I don't want to go so far ahead, but the thing is, isn't there also a story of Roy DeMeo killing Eppolito's uncle and cousin?
yes, Roy DeMeo and Nino Gadji are in a car on a Belt Parkway, and that was a whole dispute involving Paul Castellano, and he one of Jimmy Ippolito, the uncle, both made guys put in a beef with Paul Castellano and Nino Gadji. Castellano took Nino's side and let them do what they had to do. They had him in a car on the Belt Parkway. Roy DeMeo and Gadji killed both Ippolito's cousin and uncle. And when he jumps out of the car running, Nino Gadji's running. He runs into an off-duty sergeant driving a cab and gets shot. And he ends up going to MCC. He gets charged with the murders, and he dies in his cell. And then, of course, we know Roy gets killed later on, but Nino dies in his cell.
Yeah. So this guy Ippolito have a personal vendetta against the mob?
Ippolito, he had a vendetta against the police department because he also was accused of passing along confidential information to Rosario Gambino in 1984. The FBI did a search warrant and found fingerprints in a drop ceiling of a folder that came from my old unit, the intelligence division, before I worked there, on Rosario Gambino. And he beat the case in the police department's trial room. He wasn't charged criminally, but he beat the case and kept his job. So he definitely had a vendetta against the police department for accusing him, which he denied, but he was guilty of sin. And he wanted to be a mobster. He wanted to be a mobster. If you were ever in his company, he played the part to the T, where Caracappa was a very low-key guy, but Caracappa was the more violent of the two, which, we find out later on. But Ippolito was very flamboyant, and, the guy wore 40 bracelets, 50 chains, 60 rings,
He was eventually on Sarah Just
yeah, that would jump him way ahead. That's how he gets identified.
But the thing is, let's get back to so Jimmy Idell ends up shooting gas pipe, and he runs in the house, and what's his name? Sapanaro's in the house. Of course, the sister is dating Sapanaro.
And Sapanaro, basically through Sapanaro, that's how they find out who Jimmy is. He gets desperate. He tells Burt, you know what? I need these guys. So he tells him the name, and they hunt Jimmy Idell down. And Jimmy was supposedly having a meeting that day in Dyker Park, I believe, with Mickey Boy Paradiso pertaining to the incident. And Mickey Boy is never there. And then the mob cops pull up. They handcuff him because now Jimmy's also suspected of killing his girlfriend. There's a big investigation on him on killing his girlfriend, and his girlfriend finding the girl's body and all of that stuff. So it's hot for him, for Frankie Idell at that point too,
Yeah.
So he wouldn't be surprised to be grabbed.
Yeah.
But that morning, what happens is that morning before they grab Frankie, they go to Staten Island to where he lives, and they see his car, and they see his brother Frankie getting in the car, and they look similar. And they jump on top of Frankie, and Frankie's mom and sister come running out and say, like, what are you doing? And they show their badges, and they're saying, like, we're taking Jimmy away. And said, it ain't Jimmy, it's Frankie. They realize they make a mistake, and they leave. Frankie jumps in Jimmy's car, and he's going over the Verrazano Bridge. He sees them get off on 92nd Street, the exit over the bridge, which would be the exit you were going to get off of if you were going to Bay 8th Street by Dyker Park. And he then His mom also spoke to him on the phone from the Bay 8th Street payphone and had the phone records at the same exact time that puts him there.
Hmm.
So how they knew he'd be there, there's a lot of different, assumptions, but nothing that I'll say because I'm not 100% sure. But he's found there. And there's also, I won't mention the guy's name, there's another wise guy with someone else sitting, watching him in the park, looking to kill Jimmy. And later tells Queso in prison, we saw those cops grab him. We were going to kill him that day.
Hmm.
So the cops grabbed Jimmy, put him in the back seat. Like
so right away, when Jimmy's getting picked up, he's thinking that these cops are picking him up for his girlfriend's murder.
Girl's murder, yeah.
He has no idea that, you know what, they're picking him up for Casso.
No idea whatsoever.
Okay.
So they take him in the back of the car and they bring him to Toys R Us on Flatbush Avenue. When they pull in, if you ever been there, there's like a side, like alleyway. And in the back of the alleyway, there's another car. Queso's there. This is the only time Queso ever sees Eppolito Cap in person. He's there with Vicamuso, Queso, and Kaplan. Cops take him out of the car, and the cops also volunteered to kill Jimmy themselves, but Queso said, no, I need to deal with him first. I need to have him alive. They take him out of the car, and they put him in the trunk of another car. And the cops leave. And Queso takes him back to this guy Gallo's house. He's a DeCavalcanti soldier. I think it was East 76th to East 77th Street, down the basement. He brings him down the basement and basically starts torturing him for quite a while to get the names of the other three guys that were with him, to find out who ordered the hit. And he told him Mickey Boy ordered it, and I'll get into that because Mickey Boy's lucky he went to jail on something, because Queso wanted to rip him to shreds. He was first on the list.
And Mickey Boy this time was a wise guy in the Gambino family.
Yeah, correct. And Mickey Boy went to jail. He tried to get him in jail, and then he got transferred to another jail, and Queso couldn't get to him. And this is right out of Queso's mouth. He tortures him. Jimmy gives up the guys he's with. He gives up Mickey Boy Paradiso. And he has a couple of guys come down from the Gambino crime family. I think it's Joe Butch Correo, Joe Curie, and possibly Piney Armone. I'm not sure. But he has three heavyweights come down there.
He wants to know if this was sanctioned on them.
Correct. And of course, they don't know the conversation between Angelo and John. And they're like, we know nothing about this. This is an independent hit, We had nothing to do with this. They don't know the conversation between Ruggiero and John Gotti. So they leave, and Gaspipe gets the information he knows. Jimmy begged him to leave his body in the street because there was a $100,000 life insurance policy on him. He wanted his mom to collect the money. And instead, Queso kills him. And he has Frankie Lastarino and Joey Testa take the body and bury it. I believe Frankie Lastarino's father had a salvage yard or a scrap metal yard, something like that in Canarsie. And they buried the body in Canarsie, and where they eventually built something over it, so it was impossible to recover the body. Body's never recovered.
So we're talking about Frankie Lastarino and
Joey Testa, one of the Gemini twins.
All right, Joey Testa. Okay, go ahead.
So at that point, they split like $75,000 for that murder, somewhere in the area. And Eppolito ends up buying a Winnebago with that money, which is eventually traced on how much he paid cash for it, for the whole thing. And, it's traced around the same time period. and he could never show where that money came from. That was a piece of evidence that was brought into court. At that point, Queso wants everybody. So
Queso wants revenge.
he wants revenge. Mickey Boy gets pinched like shortly after, and that saves his life because Queso wanted to kill him bad. The next person he goes after, in the state of New York, if you ever had a police computer and you did a group search on a Nicky Guido, I believe there'd be 8 or 9 Nicky Guidos that would come up in New York State. Queso was told that he came from downtown. And the real Nicky Guido, really, his address on the group search was upstate New York. They come up and he drove a red car, and the cops, I find the printout in the files when we're investigating the case. And when you do a computer search with the police department, you got to put what's called your tax number in, your name, everything comes up. So it's attached to that run. It's a paper trail. And 2 weeks before Nicky Guido gets killed, Kaplan does that search on a Nicky Guido that came from like Prospect Heights, only a couple of blocks off from like downtown. That was the only one that was in that area. And it was only like maybe a mile off, not even, from being downtown, and drove a red car. Little younger.
So let me ask you a question. So he's in the data search. Now, back in the day, you could just punch in my name, right?
Yeah, but I have to put my information in to do it.
So because now that you search my name, your name's gonna come up too. That you were in the.
I found the actual printout with Kaplan's name on.
Okay.
Right. So 2 weeks. It's almost exactly 2 weeks from the time he runs that. Georgie Zappola, Joey Testa,
another name,
Frankie Lastarino. Frankie Lastarino's in charge of the hit team. They go to that address, Christmas Day. And Christmas Day, 1986, I believe it is. And Jimmy Idell gets killed in October of 86. And this nice kid, don't bother nobody. He just got a new red car. He brings his uncle down to show his uncle the new red car. They're in the car looking at it. And Joey Testa and Zappola look at Lastarino, and Lastarino gives a nod. And with a 380, Joey goes over and just pumps a bunch of bullets where the kid, Guido, jumps in front of his uncle to save his uncle's life. And I don't know how many, 5, 6 times he shoots him to death. And it's the wrong guy. And
this guy was an innocent guy.
Innocent guy.
So it just goes to show you another mob hit, not well done. They didn't double check anything, and they killed this guy for no reason.
No reason. Good family. Kid was showing his uncle a car on Christmas Day.
Unbelievable.
They killed him.
Unbelievable.
At that point, there were 2 other people involved in that hit. One guy ends up cooperating, and he dies. They never get a hold of him. They're never able to get a line on where to find him. And the other guy, he was only a driver, and supposedly that's what Jimmy said. Jimmy Idell said he didn't know what was going to happen, and Queso kind of gave him a pass to go after the 4th guy.
So, in the course of this time, now, maybe I'm going too far ahead. So you mentioned Joey Testa and Joey Zappola and Frankie Lastarino, right?
Yep.
Now, isn't there a time where Joey Testa gets pinched, and then eventually Georgie Zappola and Frankie Lastarino end up killing Patty Testa?
Yes, that's a side story. Quick.
Yeah, I'm just saying, because it's all like treachery.
Lastarino had a hard-on for Patty Testa. Why, I don't know. He kept going to Vic Amuso, asking to get rid of him. Vic didn't want to get rid of him. He liked Patty Testa. And when Vic went to jail and Gas Pipe was out there, he went to Gas Pipe, and Gas Pipe said, go do what you got to do. Him and Georgie went there. Lastarino waited outside, and Georgie's Polo shot him in the back of the head.
I mean, these people that are watching, I mean, they can't comprehend how heartless and, you know, these mafia men, you know, Lastarino, Joey Zapola, Patty Testa, Joey Testa, how serious guys they were. You know, they were just knocking off anybody, whoever they had to knock off, they were knocking off.
People don't realize how many people they killed, and Lastarino, that guy killed a lot. I mean, I don't mean to laugh. I'm not laughing for that, but he killed a lot of people. Joey Testa killed a lot of people. The mob cops were involved one way or another in 14 that we know about, 14 murders.
Wow. All right, so they killed the innocent guy Guido.
They killed Guido. And now the whole thing boils down to this. The chin is in Gas Pipe's ear. And Gas Pipe, when they killed Castellano, Joe Messina, and at the time, it was Vic Arena. The commission case was 84, so it had to be Vic Arena, who was active at the time.
And they take John Gotti's side.
It was Vic Arena, I believe, was acting at that point. If it wasn't Carmine Persico, but Carmine Persico would have known the story anyway. And Joe Messina, they backed the killing of Castellano, like they were okay with it. You know, they didn't cause Gotti a problem, and Gotti was friendly with both of them.
Now, who didn't back the killing of Castellano?
The Chin was adamantly crazy over this because they broke a cardinal rule. They didn't get a commission sanction to kill a boss, and he was, you know, out of his mind that they killed Paul Castellano, and you know they didn't get a commission sanction. So
and Tommy Bellotti.
And Tommy Bellotti, and that was his underboss.
Yeah. Now the thing is, before we go any further, let's give them a rundown of how strong at the time Vincent the Chin was. I mean, in all honesty, you know what? Vincent the Chin was probably the boss of all bosses at this time.
Yeah, they say Paul Castellano was, but the Chin ran a very, very, to this day, the Genovese family is still probably as powerful as they always were. You know, they ran a very tight ship. You didn't get straightened out at 23 years old in the Genovese family. You know what I'm saying? You had to prove yourself. You know, you were up there in your 40s, your 50s before you got made. You can have two captains in the Genovese family sitting in the same restaurant, and one don't know that the other one is in the same family as, and they're both captains. You know.
Yeah, that's pretty secretive.
You couldn't say the Chin's name. You had to refer to him like this. You know, so it evaded wiretaps or bugs. You know, he ran a tight ship, a very tight ship. You know, in his world, he was a very sharp, smart guy. You know, it took a long time till they were able to prove that he wasn't crazy, and it was all an act. But the Chin was whispering in Queso's ear. So Queso was playing to Sammy Romano that he was fine. Lucchese family was fine with what they did to Paul. Meanwhile, he was in cahoots with the Chin. So Gas Pipe was doing all the dirty work for the Chin. So they wanted to get rid of all the powerhouse people that Gotti had in his circle.
And Frankie DeChico was one of them.
Frankie DeChico was one of them. And the mob cops weren't involved in that. But what happened with that was the Chin gives up a guy to Vic Amuso and Queso, who was a munitions expert in Vietnam, to do a bombing. They knew that Gotti and DeChico would go to Jimmy Brown Faiola's club, whatever days, and they believed that they were both in there. They're watching. It's Vic Amuso, his brother, and Gas Pipe. They're watching from a little distance. And this guy that the Chin gave them, they watch him put a bomb under the car, underneath the car. And when Frankie the Chico walks out. He's walking out to leave, and he's giving Frankie Hart, who's a Lucchese soldier, a lift.
Yes.
And he had, from a distance, you could have mistaken him for John Gotti from a distance. And they're both getting in the car, but Frankie gets in first. Frankie Hart's body's like halfway in the car, and the button's not working the right way. This guy pulls right up to the car where his door actually gets blown up, pushes the button, and I don't know how nobody else got injured, but Frankie Hart got injured badly but lived. Sammy said he ran across the street. He went to take Frankie the Chico out of the car, put his hand under his back, and his hand went right through him. There was nothing left of him. It blew the blood right out of him. There was nothing left of him.
Yeah, that was
Frankie the Chico. So that's one powerhouse that's gone. That they knew, was a bona fide tough guy, had a crew and everything else.
And I remember us all going to Frankie the Chico's wake.
Yeah, they decimated him. They decimated him. So, the whole idea was to start getting rid of guys. So they had the mob cops. They then there were other murders, union murders of two guys in Long Island. There were different murders that they were involved with giving information on. There was informants that they actually gave up. Bruno Facciola was one of them. He was a big wig in the Lucchese family, and they gave him up as being an informant, and they found him with a rat in his mouth. And Louis Dedon was one of the guys that killed him, but that information came from the mob cops. Otto Heidel was no relation to Jimmy or Frankie, was another guy they believed to be an informant. And they gunned him down. I believe it was Joey Testa and Georgie Zappola that were there too. Don't quote me, but I believe it was them that killed Otto Heidel.
And these guys were gunning down everybody. And at the end of their career, I mean, they all copped out. I think to 23 years or something.
Well, Joey Testa, Georgie Zappola was part of Lucchese 22. I think there were 6 guys involved in that. They took coverage on every murder that they wanted to give up, and they got 22 years, and they're doing 20. That's why they call it the Lucchese 22. It was Jimmy Gallione. It was Georgie Zappola. It was Frankie Lastarino. It was George Conti. It was Jimmy Gallione, and I think Frankie Bones. So the 6 of them. And they became known as Lucchese 22. I think George Conti took coverage on 8 murders, So now these are the murders that some of the murders were related to organized crime, but not names that anybody would know, the information that they gave, who was talking or who was cooperating. Then they wanted Eddie Leno. Now, Eddie Leno, as we know, had people in the Bonanno family that were high-ranking guys, and Eddie was a powerhouse in the Gambino family. John loved him. He was a big earner with heroin, and he was very good to do a piece of work. He was a dangerous guy. And he was one of the guys that was involved in the Willie Boy Johnson murder. But the mob cops pull over. They're told by Kaplan. Kaplan's in the hospital at this time, and they're told by Kaplan to go and get Eddie Leno. So they pull him over on the Belt Parkway, and I'm sure he's used to always having to tail Eddie or having people pull him over, breaking his chops, whatever. They pull him over. Louis Ippolito is on the passenger side. Caracappa is on the driver's side, and he's in a Mercedes-Benz. And he's got his foot on the brake. He doesn't have the car in park. And Louis tells him, "What's on the floor on the passenger side?" And when Eddie Leno leans over to that side to look, Caracappa empties the gun in his head. And the car just rolls towards the fence, into the bushes. And there's cars driving by, It's like there's traffic. And there was one witness that does describe in the reports of a heavyset guy and a small, skinny guy. So they fit the script to the T.
I'll tell you, it's pretty amazing that these guys were assassins. They were hired assassins that were cops, and you eventually, you know what, were a part of taking these guys down.
Yeah, it was a lot of us, and it wasn't an easy task. You know, it wasn't an easy task at all. You
Yeah.
know,
So at this time, when they killed Paul Castellano, you had families. Obviously, you had Joe Messina back, John Gotti, right, and you also had the other guy from the Colombo family back, John Gotti.
I mean, Vic and Carmine. You know.
Yeah, but did Carmine Persico also back John Gotti with that
Yeah,
Castellano?
because if he didn't, Vic wouldn't have done it. He was still the boss. You know, Vic was only acting.
Yeah, but the Lucchese's and the Genovese were totally against it.
Casey played like they did. Sammy and Gaspipe thought, like, Sammy believed him and Gaspipe had a good relationship.
But meanwhile, Gaspipe,
Meanwhile,
and you're saying Gaspipe, meanwhile, you think Gaspipe played him?
Oh, he was playing Sammy.
Yeah.
You know, he was playing like he was Sammy's friend, but he wasn't. You know, he was listening to, he was getting his orders from the chin, to be honest with you, you know?
Yeah.
So then they go out and the mob cops sat on Bobby Borriello. They sat on Sammy several times. And Bobby, they sat on quite a few times. They couldn't find him. Gaspipe got frustrated. Eventually gave it to Frankie Lestorino.
So let me just get into the Bobby Borriello murder, because I don't know anything about it. I know he was murdered in his house. I know his children was very young. Now the thing is, when they killed Bobby Borriello, did they look at Bobby Borriello as a threat?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the reason why they killed him.
Yes.
Okay, so he was one of John's main guys that were a threat, and we got to get rid of him.
He was John's bodyguard. Bobby was known as a tough guy, you know, and they were looking to get rid of all the tough guys, you know.
Yeah.
So when the mob cops, they conspired to kill him, you know, numerous times, they couldn't find him. So Lestorino eventually goes to the house and kills him. Sammy, they sat on.
Let me ask you something. Who does Lestorino go to the house and kill Bobby Borriello with? Was it by himself?
No, I think Georgie was with him.
Joyce Zapola?
Yeah, I think it was both of them.
I tell you, these guys, they did a lot of work.
A lot. And you don't really hear their names, you know what I mean?
You don't hear their names, and the thing is, you know what? They're in the street today, and they're powerhouses in the family.
I mean, you're the first guy that I knew who Oscar Santorian was. I mean, and
I was, and for me to know that guy, I was a young kid, because when I went to Lewisburg Penitentiary, Bawat and DeSantis actually reached out to him to get in touch with because he was in touch with Matty Madonna and Herbie Sperling. So when I got to Lewisburg, the word was, you know, the kid Jimmy's coming here, and they were waiting for me. Herbie Sperling and Matty Madonna through Oscar Caesarian. I'm saying.
And I never heard of the guy.
Yep.
Never heard of him. And when I was reading reports on Queso, and then Queso was debriefed, him, Lestorino, and Oscar did at least 3 pieces of work in Florida and buried the bodies.
Yeah.
You know, and he was supposedly somebody that really, really had a lot of bodies behind him. He's dead now. You know?
And he's a guy you really never heard of.
Nobody would know.
When you mentioned his name, you whispered his name.
I mean, I never knew who he was, and when we were talking, you knew him. Yep. I never heard of the guy.
Because there's also a story behind him that he shot down some kind of jet.
Yeah, I heard that story.
He shot down a jet. I mean, we don't know how much, how much credibility has to it, but that's the story I heard, that he shot down a jet.
He was a bad guy, a real bad guy. And the guy that blew up Frankie DeChico is a bad guy, and he's still alive and he's still out there.
It's amazing.
He's still alive and he's still out there. And then they sat on Sammy quite a few times. But
yes. So you know what? Let's get into. So at this time, Burt Kaplan where's Burt Kaplan?
Burt Kaplan's in Brooklyn, in the neighborhood, and See, the funny thing is that he's not on anybody's radar screen, really. And there's an agent, Frank Drew, who worked for DEA, and they were doing a case on, wow, I'm really losing it.
Yeah, take your time.
Wow, my brain's fried. He was involved in a case with a bunch of guys from Canarsie who were dealing big pot, involved in some murders, and Freddie Puglisi case, they called it.
Okay.
Freddie Puglisi was around Frankie Lino at the time, and they were watching him.
Does he get killed too?
He doesn't get killed. He does 30 years in prison.
Okay.
But they were involved in several murders. There was a group of these guys from Canarsie involved in several homicides, dealing a lot of pot. I mean, tons of pot, coke, you name it, making tons of cash. He's following Freddie one day, and he remembers, Freddie would come out of a car, he would talk down to people. And he goes to a payphone, he makes a call on a payphone, and they were kind of suspicious that he jumped out and made a call from the payphone because it wasn't his normal routine. And they follow him, and he meets this older-looking gentleman, who looks a little frail, but he ain't talking down to him. That guy's talking to him. You could tell who's in charge of the conversation.
Burt Kaplan.
Burt Kaplan. They're like, who the hell is this guy? So that's how Burt Kaplan becomes into the crosshairs, and they start investigating him relative to the pot and everything else, So the whole crew gets taken down first, and then a couple of guys cooperated, which gave corroboration to lock Burt and a guy named Tommy Galpine up, who was Burt's right-hand man. That guy was as loyal to Burt as anybody could be. And Queso, in 1993, Queso cooperates, and he lists this 500 pages and change to his debriefing. Burt Kaplan's all over it, and so are the mob cops.
Now, Tom. Now, in your career, right, as law enforcement, have you ever seen, before you met Castle, 500 pages of like debriefings? I mean,
I've never read.
I mean, look, my stuff was like this. Tom, when I came forward, my stuff might have been like this much papers. Look,
his debriefing.
Seriously.
Why it was so interesting was because whatever he did, he screwed up his cooperation. He did, fudge some stuff. He did eventually start to lie about things. He was just bitter, Queso, and they ripped up his cooperation agreement, and he got worse, which only hurt him. But if you read his debriefing, it's like who's who in organized crime over the course of 40 years. The guy knew everybody, so many murders and guys you didn't even know of and things that went on. It was like everything from the neighborhood. He was involved with everybody. He himself was involved in 36 murders.
Wow.
And I mean, it was, if you're into organized crime investigations or if you're an organized crime guy, it's very, very interesting.
So let me ask you something, because, I mean, for the people to understand out there, how do you compare a guy like Gas Pipe to a guy like Sammy the Bull?
Gas Pipe was a serial killer, I mean, he was polite to me. He was polite to, the DA's office and a couple of investigators that, were with him. But in reality, like, he killed his architect who built his house. He wasn't just killing for organized crime. Burt was just killing. You know what I mean? Gas Pipe enjoyed killing. If he had a dream that you were cooperating, he killed you. So he was involved in 36, probably instrumental in more. I gotta believe, but he was a madman.
So Tom, let me get this straight too, because because his name does have to come up, John Gotti. Now, as John Gotti's guys are getting clipped and, getting killed, what is John Gotti thinking? I mean, because he's the boss. I mean, does he know where it's coming from?
They got a good idea. They got a good idea that it's coming from the chin. They don't know who the players are. They don't know, they don't really know that they got, cops on the pad that are actually as deep as they are. They don't know a lot, but they're a little nerved up. You know what I'm saying? Especially when Frankie DeChico got blown up. That kind of, because usually organized crime guys don't use bombs. Because it brings in the federal authorities, you know what I'm saying? And when they blew up Frankie and Frankie Hart, it kind of rattled them. And Sammy was there to witness it. So to see your good friend with nothing left of you, it's going to rattle anybody.
You know what? I also got to bring this into the picture where, the gas pipe, how, he was very friendly with Frankie DeChico too, gas pipe.
Yeah, but he was playing them. He
was playing with them, but it just goes to show you how treacherous that life is. I mean, it's like you're playing chess.
I'll show you how far it went. There was this guy named the Lappy who took off to California, and Queso wanted him found and killed. And the mob cops found him out in California, and the guy was on parole. And they reached out to his parole officer under the roost they had for whatever it was, found out exactly where he was. And I know Georgie Conti, I know Al Diaco's son. Those were at least two of the guys that went out to California. I believe there's a third. Could be Lastarino, I'm not sure. And they find this guy in California and they kill him. And the mob cops are the reasons that they found him. So that's another murder they were charged with.
Wow. So when you took these mob cops down, how many murders were they charged with?
They were charged with 8, but there were 14 that they were involved in that were cleared. So they were, you don't always get charged. You don't have to get charged with, if you did 25 and you got a lot of evidence on 15 of them, and the other ones could kind of like, give you reasons where the jury may not, for whatever, you'll leave them out, but you still could clear them. They were definitely 100% involved one way or the other in 14, but they were convicted. They were charged with 8, convicted of 8. They were charged with 79 predicate acts, and they were convicted of 79 predicate acts. But it took a lot to get them because they were living out in Vegas, and this investigation was kept very, 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 under the radar. There were only a handful of people that knew. Joe Ponzi was the chief investigator of Brooklyn DA's office, who eventually, that's a whole other story, on how Burt Kaplan cooperates. But Joe Ponzi single-handedly was the one that got him to cooperate. Mike Vecchione was the prosecutor that started the case in the state, who was the chief of the Rackets Bureau. It eventually went, Frank Drew, the agent who found Burt Kaplan, arrested him in Galpine, was very instrumental in it. And then there was an agent.
Tom, I don't want to interrupt you. We got 741 people in the chat. That's pretty good. Oh, that's a lot. 744 people in the chat. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. So Tom, so the thing is, when you hear about these dirty cops, right? Like eventually it comes to you. You know what? You're involved in this investigation.
I'll tell you how it happened. And listen, I was no internal affairs guy. So, cops did wrong, whatever, none of my business. If they're gonna get locked up or something's gonna happen, it's not me.
Look, I don't want to get into that yet. Okay. On our next segment, we're gonna get into, how you found out about these cops and stuff like that.
That's a very interesting story.
Yeah, we're going to get into that on our next segment. I want this to end at 8 o'clock. So we got like 15 minutes. But the thing is, I want to talk about on the way as Eppolito, he has Frank Santoro, right? Is his cousin.
Yes.
Okay. So eventually Frank Santoro gets murdered. And then he has 2 other family members that get killed by Nino Gaggi.
Jimmy Senior, Jimmy Junior, Polito, uncle and son.
So
Cousin, their father and son.
So in a way, I mean, he really had a vengeance out for like the Gambino family.
You know, maybe he did. You know, but maybe he did. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it fits in because I'm sure he wasn't unhappy going after people in the same family that killed his family. I know he was close with Santoro. I know he was close with his uncle and with his cousin. So I'm sure he didn't lose no sleep over. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have much of a conscience to begin with.
Yeah. And you know what? Even looking back, and when Frankie Smith kills Frank Santoro and this guy Carmine Variali, I mean, I look at back and I say, did this guy Carmine Variali set up his two cousins? I mean, it sounds like this is someone who would do something like that.
No, that was a totally separate subject. That hit came from, I believe, Joe Waverly, you know, because that's what Frankie Smith was around, you know, back in those days. And he only set out to kill Variali, and Santoro lunged at him after he shot Variali. So Frankie had no choice but to shoot Santoro. And I know Queso said he would have tried to stop that from happening if he could have, if he would have known that Santoro was the intermediate between the cops. And with Santoro gone, now you didn't have an intermediate to Kaplan.
So the thing is, Tom, so Frankie Smith, we know Frankie Smith, he's from the neighborhood, he's from Bay 13th and Beth. And so Frankie Smith actually killed a made guy.
Yeah.
That's something. He was an associate and he killed a made guy. I mean, you know what? And this is a lot of people don't know about these guys, you know, and, you know, Frankie Smith was a Mad Hatter. I mean, if you know anything about Frankie Smith, which a lot of people out there don't, you know, he's very low key. You know, he cooperated later on after doing some time. I mean, he was looking at a lot of time, right? And then they re-indicted him.
He did 20 years on a case that I believe everybody knew that he really wasn't guilty of. You know, that was what the word was.
He was doing time for someone else, I think Teddy, right?
No, for BF.
He was doing time for BF, a 20-year bid he took. He didn't commit the crime, and he took the time anyway. And then later on, as he's doing the time, I think they re-indicted him for another murder, right? That's when he decided. He said, "You know what? I mean, listen, I'm doing 20 years for a crime I didn't commit. I think it was drug related, and now they're indicting me on a murder." And now he's saying to himself, "You know what the fuck am I going to do? Throw my whole life away over here? You know what I mean? I'm finishing up doing 20, and now, you know, they're re-indicting me. They're looking at lights out over here."
100%. He would have did life.
Yeah. So I don't know. I got to look at Frankie Smith as a stand-up guy. I'm saying, I mean, you know, doing time like that, didn't open up his mouth. I mean, I'm not glorifying what he did or justifying anything he did. But out of all the guys, in all honesty, you know what? The guy kept his mouth shut for something he didn't do. And then later on, he just said, "You know what? Everyone else is doing it. I might as well do it too. I might as well save myself."
I mean, how much time are you going to do? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yep. But listen, it's 7:50. I mean, we could talk about, you know, someone else if you want. But, you know, we could leave it at this too, and we could continue tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different parts, I said, and offshoots to this story. We could go on forever. You know everybody that I'm talking about. You know what I mean when I bring up these names.
I'll tell you, and how it amazes me is that, like you said, Frankie Sharp, Frankie, George Zapola, Georgie Conti, all these guys took the 22. I mean, these guys copped out to 8 murders.
Some might think more. I mean, Georgie, I know for a fact, was 8.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, 8 murders, 22 years for 8 murders. I mean, it sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
That was a once-in-a-lifetime deal just to get a global plea on 6 defendants, 22, and get rid of them, you know?
And these people don't understand. Like, these people that are watching right now, they don't understand what it is to get 22 years for 8 murders.
I mean, people get lethal injection for 1, you know?
That's what I'm saying. People get life just for 1 murder. These people have 8 murders. They copped out to 22 years. Figure it out. What are you doing? 3 years of murder?
You know, I don't think they had him on all of these murders, but then just for closure for the families and to be able to close the cases, they told them, listen, take coverage for, you know, whatever else you did, and we'll accept it on the same plea, you know, at least so families know what happened to their loved ones, you know?
Yeah. But we have 773 people in the chat. Thank you for tuning in. And Tommy Dades, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I look forward to coming back, Jimmy. Thank you for having me.
What we'll do is we'll continue this segment on a part 2. And, you know, Fatball Sicilian, he's going to be interviewing AJ Soprano on his channel. So if you want, you should go watch him. At 8 p.m., Fatball Sicilian will be interviewing AJ Soprano, the actor who played Tony Soprano's son. So, you know, the guys that are watching right now, you could go to at 8 p.m., Fatball Sicilian. And I appreciate Tommy Dades, my brother. I love you.
Love you too, Jimmy.
I can't wait to see you soon. In April, we're going to the fights. We'll bring the girls. And listen, I love you. And I'll see you again in a day or two.
You got it. Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Love you. Thank you, Tommy Dades.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. And that was Tommy Dades. Thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Fatball Sicilian is interviewing AJ Soprano, the actor who played Tony Soprano's son. So if you want to check it out, one in a lifetime, Fatball Sicilian, AJ Soprano, check it out, 8 p.m. Go to Fatball Sicilian channel, and I'll see you guys soon. I love you guys. Thank you for the support. Thank you for being loyal to me. And until the next video, have a good night. See you soon. Bye, guys. Wait up. Let's do the video one more time. See ya.
The streets will never make you grow. It's not a seed, it's a gutter. There's no happy endings in this life. So this is my message to you. The streets will never love you back.